Thank you so much. All right, and I also have the pleasure to introduce Eileen G'Sell, our first featured reader today. Eileen is a poet and culture critic with recent contributions to such publications as Poetry, Peripheries, Smartish Pace, Hyperallergic, The Baffler, and Jacobin. Her first book of poetry, Life After Rugby, was published in 2018 from Goldwake Press. Her second poetry volume, Francofilaments, was published in 2024 by Broken Sleep Books. In February of next year, her first book of nonfiction, Lipstick, will be published by Bloomsbury. A 2023 Rabkin Prize winner for arts journalism, she teaches writing and media studies at Washington University. Please join me in welcoming Eileen G'Sell.
Thank you, Claire. It's really wonderful to be here. I've never read in Baltimore before, and I'm from St. Louis, and I feel like Baltimore and St. Louis have a lot of things in common. They're both very literary, haunted cities, so I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to read from my latest book, Francofilaments, and I'll start with a poem called Close. Two boys sprint through a pink field, elbows and knees spearing the air. Two boys through a field of knees, the air pinking their elbows. Two boys field the pink air, sprinting past elbowed knees. Two boys spear the pink, fielding knees, air, and elbows. Two boys knee the field air, sprinting through the pink. Two boys elbow the air, sprint through spears. Two boys air the elbow field. Two boys pink the air. So that poem is it's inspired by a Francophone film called Close by Lucas Dont about two young boys who fall in love with each other. And a lot of this book was inspired by the films that I wrote about between like 2015 and 2023. I did a lot of writing as a film critic about Francophone films. And so I was exploring my own Francophilia in Francofilaments, but also where I'm from and what it means to kind of live a life that is inspired by lives on screen. So with that poem, each line gets shorter and recycles the same words and syntactically plays with them. So it was a way to kind of emulate what I saw going on cinematically in terms of like the way that a camera cuts and makes a scene shorter and shorter and shorter. It's the kind of thing we take for granted when watching films, but I love to see connections between different art forms, and I felt like a lot of this book was also exploring what does it mean to write kind of cinematographically. So that's something that I aspire to do. So I'm going to read some poems that were inspired by certain actresses and filmmakers that I interviewed and their films. The first one is called Juliette Binoche. Doe-eyed stilettos, willowy swagger, ebullience with a beveled edge of democracy, Brazilian doc, got dumped right after marvelous things I thought I might regret. Did not, did nothing, did what one does when one does naughtily, unknots a throat during clouds in March. On a morning a man lies sweetly, unquietly, a man who is bad at lying. Down the avenues I sauntered, the promenades I tread, bragging about how close I was to ghosting all the Frenchmen and Frenching all the ghosts, to learning every line up, ladies, this could be your last chance, your fresh twist of fate, that soaring boulevard of dreams too old to follow, a life too calm to dread, a sparkling path that curls around croissants and crepuscules, a quick adieu to reason and hair too thick to comb, the lost pages dog-eared with unbearable precision, her mouth a long, cool j'adore, and her heart singing darkly. Let's see. And this one's about Marion Cotillard. We're inspired by her. More Annabelle Lee than Lady Dior, what part of the body clasps on command or blinks the morning after my first mirage splashed my face in shallow sky? I was alone and not dead inside this ocean, your favorite plot of luxury dirt, exposition for right at the turn at the end of the pier, a bet with the moon that anyone can mimic a free spirit in a flowy skirt. The least corporeal option is what we're going to get. I'm going to read the next poem, which is inspired by a friend of mine who I actually saw for the first time in 7 years today. My friend Babs is from Belgium, but has lived in Baltimore, I think, for like the last 15 years. So this is my shout out to Baltimore. It's a shout out to Babs. It's called Atomium Riposte. Babs, who is Belgian and lives in Baltimore, recommends a Brussels brasserie. Babs from the New York book launch, the novel Hers, The Lighting Magic, the book launch at which I tipsied and someone thought I was Tabby Gevinson, the launch after which I joined a threesome, but only halfway, girl too young. My past stashed in a bag bought for summer and for sequins, a beautiful man of 20 offers up a gratis glass. No matter the age, the skyline mocks the unoffended pigeons. I'll take olives with that elegy, though I dislike olives. And I'll take this afternoon to relish, to repent. Who are you, historic view, to profit from my mischief? The cathedral meets my gaze and says, you are my cathedral. So, in between the poems I have about different actresses and filmmakers, I have these like slutty prose poems that found their way into the book. And I don't know what it is about the prose poem for me, but for whatever reason, it kind of just becomes more promiscuous. The next one is Virginie Efira. She's really famous in like French rom-coms, and I recommend her. She's not as famous in the United States. Virginie Efira. Seek out pleasure until pleasure itself becomes sad and slips through cracks in the street unpaved. For years I was redundant to myself. Orange number robbed of approximate waist, a natural penchant for perfect posture, flowers dumped that could be dried by the fire. She was running out of options to pretend to be young enough to redirect traffic, pedaling north in platform heels, mane flying behind her like a flag you could salute. Vicky Creeps. What is a motif? A woman in mourning for her own body. Of work impresses the queen, a single mother of no invention beyond the invention of the mother. Something we can all be proud of, ourselves, grit in the face of reason, delight a bike of rusted doubt, neon lights, an empty stage, a dog dragging a yellow leash en route to a mother of ankles, tight adventures in leather books line the lobby, the color of seafloor, naked theory of womanly everything you thought you knew, escapism, however tenuous, proves the only recourse to agency. And here's another slutty prose poem. It's called Nooners. Let me be your Elizabeth Warren. Your wristwatch glints, but I don't watch watches. My escort body adores the conceptual art you made and hung over the bed. I love the idea of you alone with pink construction paper, of you with heavy-duty scissors doing anything with a shred of rage. Your fantasy of a midday round-armed sofa-bound bukkake, so autumn 2012. I will always be angrier than you could guess. I will always know what time it is. Resplendent as words you can't possibly mean, redundant as sex in your native tongue. It makes sense that I'm the one who would mouth the hour's instructions, who would show you how perfectly to pronounce the word boss. This next poem is after Celine Sciamma. A lot of people know Sciamma for her film Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is incredible. But I also really, really love her earlier stuff and her later stuff, which often explores the lives of children. And one of my favorite films by her is Petite Maman. And I wrote about that film actually for the Hopkins Review, which is an amazing journal that has trusted me to write about film for them for the last 3 years. But this poem is kind of based on my film writing about Celine Sciamma and also the interview I did with her in 2022. Celine Sciamma. You gave me breathing lessons I thought I didn't need, a space and time to velvet forests, liquid crystal displays of taste where time is a level of depth to image, rumble like we could all float away from the hum of home, the rhythm of teeth punctiliously brushed, the scratch of pencil on old loose leaf, two whose sister ponytail bramble, oak tree forts of billowing girls. You didn't invent my sadness, you stained its satin in just the right way. And this one's for Laura Calamy. Wanting to be a person easy to forgive, a shoe worn out to difficult parties, hosted in rooms with views of shoes, moving shoes, others choose to step on someone slower, taller than speech from the metro, mouth a small apology to anyone fluffing their pillows, reading the news. The road to success is paved with shoes, escorting leather ankles, shoes wanted for heavy roads. A dog-eat-dog world can make anyone a bitch. One of the things that I like to do as a critic that sometimes informs my poetry, but not always, is think about how sometimes we put certain figures on a pedestal because of an accomplishment, and then it's very easy to overlook other things they've done which are not so great. And I think even as a feminist film critic, this is something I think about a lot. And Claire Denis is a filmmaker that I both love and have taken issue with. And so she's a brilliant filmmaker, but some of the ways she represents race, I think, is troubling. So I wrote this poem kind of thinking about what it means to be like a kind of female icon in film, but also, and like a kind of badass, but also that doesn't mean that you're somehow, inculpable of mistakes. Claire Denis. Sex with a revolutionary does not make one revolutionary. Power is never just power, she says. I don't want to be a nurse or doctor, just an observer, flat pokes and slow fans, and hair splayed formidable. A penchant for developing countries does not make one an expert. Arrows via erasure, the bedding and shedding of white material via Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Cameroon, Djibouti, interchangeable as neutral shapewear, cool as patrician table manners, filial cheeks and freckled duty, a hatless riposte on a speeding bike, hauling baskets of coffee berries, a cultivated ignorance, or is it guilt? Cold as the petri dish, she straddles, stuns, and smirks at the world. So one of the things I did in this book is also think about American expats who, for whatever reason, fled the United States or left the United States and moved to Paris, especially in times when Paris seems like more inclusive, especially for Black Americans. And there are several St. Louisans or St. Louis adjacent artists who did choose to leave. In 1990, Tina Turner had moved to Europe and did an incredible photo series with the photographer Peter Lindbergh. And she was single for the first time. She was 50 years old. Her new solo career was like exploding. And in this series of photos, there's an incredible section that's devoted to her on the Eiffel Tower. So I wrote this poem, Tina Turner in Paris, as a kind of homage to her. And she never left Europe. She stayed there for the rest of her life. Tina Turner in Paris. No need to touch in order to grasp 50 and floating off the Eiffel, muse to Elia, Lindbergh, body of music 3 decades strong, gold-beaded swagger, velvet strut, eye full of bicep, flex for the sky, overcast and underslept, muse to her own indefatigable self, hemmed in tight cotton, brow to the sun. She swapped her passport for another country that loved her better, not because it understood her, but because it didn't try to exhaust the ways a woman can be touched in order to touch her country, of course, has all but forgot. And then I think I'll just read a couple more. Thank you once again. And thank you, Ivy Bookshop, for ordering the books. They're over there. I just really appreciate it. Anytime there's effort from so many different institutions to put something like this on. Okay. I'll read Agnes Varda. She didn't think it was difficult to live her life. Flute-filled credits, half-bleached bowl cut, and Susan Sontag asking pointed questions in 1969. One of the few to gain approval to visit Panther headquarters, a devotion to cats and heart-shaped everything. Nothing is trite, with empathy and love. A busker swallowing multiple frogs, a woman lying blank on a beach with a Bible over her bosom. Eccentric genius, patron saint of potatoes and unconventional thinking, who outlived Truffaut but not Godard, who fled to the cranky countryside. And I think I'll end with May 68. This was a poem that was inspired in part by teaching at a Missouri prison. And one of the things that we realized is that we could kind of show whatever films we wanted if they weren't in English, because the warden wouldn't watch them to actually screen them to make sure they were free of nudity and all these things. And as anyone here would know about Godard and French New Wave, there's a lot of nudity and a lot of sexuality. So it was actually really delightful teaching some Godard in the prison. And we also taught one that's literally about bureaucracy and strikes and rebellion and May 68. So we were able to kind of get away with teaching some pretty revolutionary cinema because no one wanted to watch the French films ahead of time. May 68. I taught Tout va bien in a Missouri prison, the subtitles missing. Students filled in the blanks with merci beaucoup, au revoir, let them eat cake. The workers work with the bourgeois, a potato tower set on fire. 16 workers whip the clapperboard, potato the foreground, magic marker blood on cotton aprons. In the country, there is countryside, social theater, supermarket chains of torn receipts, certified love, the free market and free produce we pretend to love and shut our mouths. Be realistic, demand the impossible. Jane Fonda in her Clute do the star to make the movie happen. Hurry to checks in manly hands, the joke of revolution. Thank you.